Tonight, dear listener, we turn our gaze not to the clamor of markets or the din of city streets, but to the slow, eternal hush of starlight. Imagine yourself reclining beneath a sky brushed with silver, the constellations above, like embroidered stitches in a dark velvet cloak. The waves of the Aegean lap softly, as though rehearsing the rhythms of a story that has been told for millennia. You are safe, you are warm, and you are here to listen. The tale before us is vast, one of the most enduring myths ever woven by human voices. Yet we will walk through it gently, step by step, as if strolling along a moonlit shore. This is the Trojan War. But before spears clash and towers burn, we must linger at the beginning, when war was only a shadow and destiny hummed in whispers. The ancients, those tireless poets, never began their stories with blunt edges. They started as we do now, with softness, a marriage feast, a gathering of gods, and a sky that seemed innocent of all the storms it was about to release. In Greek storytelling, tradition beginnings are always deceptive. What looks like harmony, a banquet, a birth, a peace, soon proves itself to be a seed of conflict. Perhaps it is not so different in our own lives, when laughter at a table conceals future sorrow, and when promises made lightly become binding oaths. And so, we recline with the gods at a wedding. The bride is Thetis, a sea goddess, with eyes like glimmering foam daughter of the ancient sea. The groom is Peleus, a mortal hero of Thessaly. Zeus himself arranges the union, though not out of romantic generosity. You see, Thetis was destined to bear a son mightier than his father. The thunderer Zeus, ever cautious when the word mightier is whispered near his throne, decided she would marry a mortal rather than risk a rival. It is a curious gift, divine matchmaking born less of affection and more of divine self-preservation. Still, the banquet is splendid. One imagines a glittering hall garlands of flowers, dripping fragrance lyres singing their delicate threads of sound. Amphorae of wine are poured bread, and roasted meats past laughter echoing like chimes. All the gods have come save one. For who would dare invite Eris, goddess of discord, to leave her off the guest list seemed wise. To include her seemed unthinkable. Poor planners. Eris thrives on exclusion, and so she comes anyway, silent as a draft of cold air through a shutter. She carries nothing but a golden apple. Not for eating, of course, an apple for quarreling. On it inscribed with a simple phrase, "To the fairest." Perhaps you smile, gentle dreamer, for you can already sense how such a small gesture might ignite vanity like dry tinder. In the hush of myth, even fruit can spark a war that lasts 10 years. Let us pause here. Do you feel how fragile harmony is? A wedding meant to seal bonds becomes the cradle of division. Eris drops her apple upon the banquet table, and the clamor begins. Hera, queen of the gods, stretches her jeweled hand toward it. Athena, bright-eyed goddess of wisdom, raises her brow. Aphrodite, fragrant and radiant, tilts her head with a knowing smile. Each insists the apple is hers. For who among them is not fairest? The laughter dies down. The lyres falter. Soon the air is thick with sharp words, like the buzzing of angry bees. Zeus himself, Lord of Thunder, wisely refuses to arbitrate. After all, choosing between wife-daughter and goddess of love is a puzzle with no happy solution. And so, he delegates as powerful figures often do. Here, dear listener, the wheel of fate turns toward a quiet shepherd prince in Troy, a man named Paris. But we will not hurry to him yet, for tonight's first chapter is not about Paris or Helen or the clash of bronze upon bronze. It is about how even the gods, with all their immortality, fall prey to vanity, pride, and rivalry. A golden apple is enough to fracture Olympus itself. Perhaps you, reclining in this quiet hour, recall how small quarrels sometimes grow larger than we expect. A word misheard, a promise unkept. The poets of Greece knew this truth. Wars begin not with armies, but with slights. And so they embroidered this myth with meaning. To the philosopher, the apple is hubris. To the dramatist, it is foreshadowing. To the weary sleeper, it is a reminder that even the grandest struggles often sprout from the tiniest seeds. And yet how luminous this banquet must have seemed before the quarrel. The torches flickering golden against marble walls, the scent of oil lamps and laurel, the shimmer of gowns woven by divine hands. Imagine sitting there, unnoticed, sipping honeyed wine, listening to Hermes tell some sly jest. Would you have seen the apple as dangerous? Or would you, too, have laughed and thought it a clever party trick? Let us close this section gently, with the thought that beginnings are often quieter than their endings. Tonight, we have entered the myth, not with bloodshed, but with starlight and celebration. The apple rests upon the table, its glow soft as moonlight on water, and three goddesses lean forward, each with a heart certain of her beauty. Around them, immortals hold their breath, sensing that destiny has slipped quietly into the room. The story has begun. And so, dear listener, let your thoughts drift with it. The apple waits, the quarrel deepens, and already the threads of fate are tightening, invisible but unbreakable. Soon we will follow the goddesses to a shepherd's hut on Mount Ida, where choice and charm and folly entwine. But not yet. For now, stay with this banquet. Let its torches flicker in your mind. Let the harp notes fade, and let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that we have only just stepped across the threshold of Troy's long sorrow. The apple lies gleaming still, dear listener, golden and round, like a little sun fallen from the heavens. It rests in the middle of the banquet table, as though it were some innocent fruit waiting to be sliced. But the three pairs of eyes fixed upon it, Hera's sharp and regal, Athena's gray, and glinting Aphrodite soft and laughing, reveal its danger. Discord has done her work. The feast grows tense like a song suddenly off-key. It is said that silence at a banquet is more dangerous than quarrels, for silence means words are being sharpened within. Hera, the queen of heaven, wife of Zeus, ruler of the gods, by marriage and by majesty, stretches her hand toward the apple. She is after all the queen. Is not the fairest among the immortals also the most exalted Athena goddess of wisdom, and war's clever craft smiles faintly tilting her head? Fairness to her is not only skin deep, it is brilliance of mind, strength of arm, and clarity of gaze. If beauty shines, then surely wisdom blazes brighter still. And she, Athena, is wisdom incarnate. But then there is Aphrodite. Gentle laughter escapes her lips as she lifts the apple casually, as though it were destined to belong to her all along. She is beauty itself, love personified charm made flesh. The word fairest could mean no one else. Her smile is not merely confident. It is the smile of one who knows that every heart, godly or mortal, must eventually bow to desire. Around them, the other gods and goddesses murmur uneasily. Zeus watches in guarded silence his thunderbolts better spent elsewhere. To choose is to condemn, and condemnation, when directed toward three of Olympus's fiercest goddesses, is perilous even for him. Better to defer, better to pass the apple into other hands. And so, with the flick of his will, Zeus appoints a mortal judge. It will be Paris, Prince of Troy, who will decide the matter. A strange choice, you might think, dear dreamer. Why should a mere shepherd prince weigh the beauty of the gods? But therein lies the peculiar humor of Olympus. When the divine quarrels, it is the mortal world that pays the price. Now let us step softly into the quiet hills of Mount Ida, not far from the shining towers of Troy. Paris lives here, exiled by prophecy. At his birth, omen spoke that he would bring ruin upon Troy, and so his father King Priam sent him away. Yet fate, like ivy, always finds a way to climb back to the walls it was destined to cover. Paris abandoned Prince Gru as a shepherd tending flocks beneath the mountain sky. He was fair of face, gentle of manner, and most of all, fated to judge. One can picture the moment. The goddesses descend to him in a shimmer of light accompanied by Hermes, ever the swift messenger who serves as herald and guide. Imagine poor Paris, a simple shepherd with crook in hand, suddenly confronted with three immortals, each radiant as dawn. What mortal heart would not tremble, and yet trembling or not he must decide. But the goddesses do not leave the choice to mere eyesight. Each in turn approaches him with promises. Hera, with the grandeur of a queen, promises him dominion. "Choose me," she says, "and I will give you kingdoms without end. The scepter of kingship, the authority of emperors, the rule of men stretching as far as your eyes can see." Her words taste of ambition, heavy as iron. Athena follows her armor, gleaming her wisdom coiled like a serpent ready to strike. She promises Paris glory, in war skill beyond all warriors' wisdom, to guide his hand and mind. "Choose me," she says, "and you will be unmatched in battle, a general whose name echoes in eternity." Her words taste of strategy sharp as bronze. Last comes Aphrodite. She does not speak of crowns or battlefields. She speaks of love. She leans close, her voice softer than silk, her eyes like tides pulling inexorably toward shore. "Choose me," she whispers, "and I will give you the love of the most beautiful woman in the world." Her words taste of honey, sweet and irresistible. And so, dear listener, Paris chooses. How could he not? Mortals do not hunger first for power or wisdom, though some pretend they do. They hunger for love, for the warmth of another's arms, for the beauty that lingers when battles fade and thrones crumble. Paris lifts the apple and places it in Aphrodite's hand. The choice is made. The threads of destiny, invisible yet unbreakable, tighten again. Hera scowls, her eyes flashing like storm clouds. Athena turns away, her lips press thin, her wrath slow but deep. Aphrodite smiles, triumphant, as though she has not just won an apple, but the entire course of history. Pause with me here, gentle dreamer. Consider the irony that the greatest war of the mythic age begins not with armies, not with strategies, not even with insult, but with desire, with the heart's tilt toward beauty. The Greeks knew well that longing could unmake empires. Their poets painted this moment again and again, on vases, and in verse 3, goddesses, a shepherd prince, and a golden apple. All of it so delicate, so small. And yet from this comes a war of 10 years, thousands of deaths, cities aflame. So rest now within this quiet mountaintop. The sheep graze nearby bells, tinkling in the distance. The goddesses ascend again, their verdict sealed. Paris stands in the hush of the mountain wind, holding a promise in his heart that will one day carry him across the seas to Sparta, to a woman named Helen, and to the unraveling of Troy itself. But for tonight, let him be only a shepherd again. Let him watch his flocks under the starlight, unaware, or perhaps dimly aware, that fate has already chosen for him. And let you too close your eyes, a little breathing, slow, letting the rhythm of destiny's loom become the rhythm of your dreams. Paris lingers on the slopes of Mount Ida, dear listener, his shepherd's crook resting against his shoulder, his eyes still dazzled by the vision of goddesses who had shimmered and vanished into the air. The apple of discord has found its owner. Aphrodite's fingers closed upon it like the soft clasp of fate itself. Hera and Athena retreat wounded, not in beauty, but in pride. And that, as any Greek would murmur knowingly, is often the sharper wound. Now, this shepherd prince stands between two worlds, the quiet pastures where he has tended sheep and loved the mountain air, and the grand destiny that tugs at his name as surely as the tide pulls at the shore. For Aphrodite has whispered a promise into his ear, and promises made by gods are not idle. The most beautiful woman in the world shall be yours. That was her gift. Yet beauty like a torch brings not only light, but fire, and fire consumes. Let us drift for a moment into the halls of Troy, gleaming with stone towers and high gates. Paris is the son of Priam, king of this proud city, though long ago he was cast out because of a prophecy. At his birth, seers foretold that he would bring about Troy's ruin. Priam and Hecuba, his parents, trembled at such words and ordered the child to be abandoned on the mountain. Yet fate, which delights in irony, spared him. A shepherd found the babe, raised him, and he grew tall, graceful, and gentle, beloved even by the nymph Oenone, who shared her wisdom of herbs and healing with him. Now imagine Paris's return to Troy. He does not march as a conqueror, but walks with the quiet step of one who is both stranger and heir. Priam welcomes him back, the prophecy forgotten in the warmth of recognition. The court rejoices in their lost son found again. And yet, dear dreamer, you and I know fate has a memory longer than kings. Meanwhile, far from Troy and Sparta, Helen lives. The poets always pause here, as though words themselves falter before her radiance. Daughter of Zeus and Leda, she is mortal, yet touched by divinity, her beauty so astonishing that it was said every man who looked upon her felt both delight and despair. She is queen of Sparta, wife to Menelaus, her household rich with sacrifice feasting and the scent of olive oil on polished floors. Yet within her life of ritual and order lies a hollowness, a space that Aphrodite intends to fill. But let us recall how Helen came to Menelaus in the first place. For when she was of age to wed kings and princes from across Greece, gathered each burning with desire to claim her hand. Odysseus of Ithaca, clever and far-seeing, proposed a solution that all suitors swear an oath binding themselves to protect the chosen husband whatever the cost. And so it was that Menelaus won Helen, but behind his triumph stood the silent pact of many kings. One day, this pact would transform from courtly promise into the muster of war. Now Paris, guided by Aphrodite, journeys to Sparta. Imagine the voyage, the creak of timbers, the sails filling with salt wind, the horizon widening as the Aegean's blue expanse bears him toward his prize. Was his heart troubled? Did he remember Oenone left behind, who warned him that his quest would bring ruin? The poets hint at his doubts, yet desire sings louder than caution. When Aphrodite herself steers your course, resistance is as useless as holding back the tide. Picture the meeting. Gentle dreamer. Paris enters the halls of Menelaus, a guest, his cloak scented with travel, his eyes bright with youth. Helen greets him, her gaze lingering longer than courtesy requires. Whether by Aphrodite's enchantment or by some secret stirring within her own heart, she sees in him not merely a foreign prince, but a vision of passion unchained. Menelaus, unaware, welcomes him with feasts and gifts, as Greek custom demanded of hosts. Hospitality, Xenia, was sacred, a bond between guest and host, blessed by Zeus himself. And so the irony deepens. The very laws of honor that open the door for Paris also make the betrayal more shocking when it comes. For in time, Helen leaves with Paris. Whether she goes willingly bewitched by Aphrodite's charm, or unwillingly carried like treasure stolen in the night, the storytellers never fully agree. But the effect is the same. When dawn rises over Sparta, and Menelaus finds his queen gone, only echoes and fury remain. The oath sworn long ago by her suitors flares back to life. Pause with me here, dear listener, in this moment of departure. Can you hear the creak of oars as Paris's ship pushes away from Spartan shores? The sea churns beneath, and in its spray, one can almost taste the bitterness to come. Helen gazes back, perhaps with longing, perhaps with sorrow, perhaps with relief. Paris triumphant clasps her hand. Aphrodite smiles from afar. And in Troy, high upon the walls, Cassandra, the prophetess cursed, never to be believed, weeps. The stage is set. What was once only a quarrel over an apple has become the abduction of a queen. And in Greece, kings begin to polish their armor. Smiths hammer new shields, and messengers ride out to summon men to war. The fleet will gather at Aulus' sails, bright against the horizon, an armada drawn by both honor and anger. But let us not hurry. For tonight, we drift upon the threshold of this vast conflict, hearing only the soft sigh of waves and the whisper of destiny like a lullaby, both tender and foreboding. Sleep gently. With this knowledge, love, pride, and promises have set the world upon its course. Soon, bronze will clash and towers will burn. But for now, the ships are only beginning to stir. The seas grow restless, dear listener, as though Poseidon himself senses the storm that mortals are about to summon. Menelaus has discovered the absence of his queen, and fury burns within him like a torch held too close to dry reeds. Helen is gone, her place at the hearth, cold her voice, absent from the halls of Sparta. She has sailed away with Paris, carried by Aphrodite's promise and her own restless heart. And Menelaus, humiliated before all Greece, calls upon the oath sworn long ago. Let us pause for a breath and remember that oath. When Helen was yet unmarried, her beauty drew kings and heroes from every corner of Hellas. They came in droves, each eager to win her hand. Ajax of Salamis, Idomeneus of Crete, Diomedes of Argos, Menelaus of Sparta, and many more. Their rivalry was fierce, and bloodshed loomed even before love was secured. Yet Odysseus, clever in his quiet way, proposed a pact that all suitors, regardless of who won, should swear to defend the chosen husband's rights. To break the pact would be dishonor. To honor it would one day cost them dearly. Now that day has arrived. Menelaus calls upon his brother, Agamemnon, High King of Mycenae, whose authority stretches over many Greek realms. Help me, he pleads, for Helen, my wife has been stolen, and my honor lies in ruins. Agamemnon, ever ambitious, sees in this not only a duty, but an opportunity to lead the greatest host Greece has ever known, to bring Troy low, and to carve his name upon the tablets of eternity. And so, the call spreads across the land. Messengers ride oaths, are reminded promises recalled. One by one, kings and princes gather. Nestor of Pylos, wise and venerable, too old for battle, yet too rich in counsel to be left behind. Ajax, massive and unyielding, a mountain of bronze. Diomedes, fierce and cunning eyes blazing with youth's fire. And Odysseus himself, reluctant, wishing only for his quiet island Ithaca, his faithful Penelope, and his newborn son. Yet fate does not leave clever men in peace. He tries to feign madness, sowing salt into his fields to appear unfit for war. But Agamemnon's messengers are cleverer still. They place the infant Telemachus in his path, and when Odysseus veers his plow aside to spare the child, his ruse is undone. He will sail with them, whether he wills it or not. The most coveted warrior of all is Achilles, son of Peleus and Thetis, the child born from the very wedding feast that began this quarrel. His mother, the sea goddess, has long known that his fate is bound to Troy. Some say she dipped him in the river Styx to make him invulnerable, holding him by the heel. Others say his destiny is more subtle, a short life of glory, or a long one in obscurity. Thetis, desperate to save him, hides him among the maidens of Scyros disguised in women's clothes. Yet Odysseus, sly and sharp, arrives with gifts for the maidens, jewels, fabrics, and one shining sword. When Achilles reaches for the weapon, his disguise is broken and his destiny sealed. He too will join the host. And so, the gathering grows. Imagine it, gentle dreamer, a vast assembly of ships, over 1,000 sails gleaming white against the sea's deep blue. The beaches of Aulis groan with the weight of warriors' bronze armor, catching sunlight spears leaning like a forest of pine. Horses' wicker ships creak, smiths hammer last-minute repairs. The air is alive with expectation, with oaths renewed with the nervous laughter of men who know they march toward both glory and doom. Yet the winds do not blow. The sea lies still as glass, unmoved, unyielding. Days pass, then weeks, as the army languishes on the shore, their provisions dwindling. An augur is consulted, and the truth is revealed. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, is angered. Agamemnon, proud and careless, has insulted her. Some say he boasted he was a better hunter. Some say he slew a sacred stag. Whatever the cause, Artemis demands recompense. The fleet cannot sail until Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter, Iphigenia. Here the story slows, as though the poets themselves held their breath. Agamemnon is torn between a father's love and a king's duty. Without his daughter's blood, the ships will not move. With it, he stains his hands forever. In the end, ambition triumphs over tenderness. Iphigenia is lured to Aulis under the guise of a wedding promised to Achilles. She comes radiant, hopeful, her heart full of dreams. And instead, she finds an altar, priests, and her father's sorrowful eyes. Some say Artemis, moved by pity, whisks her away at the last moment, leaving a deer in her place. Others say the blade falls, and her cry fades into the sea wind. The poets differ, but the effect is the same. The winds rise, the sails fill, and the fleet surges forward at last. Pause here with me, gentle dreamer. Do you feel the heaviness? This is the nature of Greek tragedy, that the cost of destiny is always blood, and that men will barter even their dearest loves for the sake of honor and ambition. The ships leave Aulis not only with warriors aboard, but with a father's guilt trailing like smoke across the horizon. As you rest, picture the fleet setting out, rowers chanting in rhythm, the sea foaming beneath their oars. Above, gulls cry, and the sun glitters upon the helms of thousands. The long war has begun, though Troy itself has not yet glimpsed the storm gathering across the sea. Let us leave the armada upon the waves tonight. Let them sail proud and eager, not yet knowing the long years ahead, the ashes to come, and the grief that will outlast victory. And let you, dear listener, drift into your own harbor of dreams, knowing the story will carry you gently onward. The fleet surges onward, gentle dreamer, a forest of masts upon the restless sea. The air is alive with shouts of sailors and the creak of ropes, the sails swelling now that Artemis has been appeased. From afar, the spectacle must have seemed like a moving island, so many ships gathered under one cause. They travel eastward toward Troy, hearts hot with vengeance, yet not all goes smoothly. The sea, after all, has its moods, and the gods are fickle guardians. The first to leap ashore upon Trojan soil is Protesilaus, a noble warrior whose fate was sealed before his sandals touched the sand. For it was foretold that the first Greek to land would be the first to fall. He knew this, and yet he sprang forward spear high, eager to carve his name into glory. And indeed, he died swiftly cut down by Trojan defenders, his life given to destiny's appetite. Such is the bitter coin with which omens are paid. The Greeks, undeterred, make their camp upon the beaches, their tents spreading like a second city facing Troy. Yet the walls of Troy are high, and its defenders are fierce. Priam, the aged king, wise and weary. Hector, the stalwart son, noble and brave. Paris, the cause of it all, yet sheltered behind others' spears. And so the war begins, not with a swift assault, but with raids upon the countryside, long sieges and skirmishes that flicker like sparks before a bonfire. 9 years pass in this rhythm. Think of it, dear listener, nearly a decade of weariness. Warriors who once marched with songs now carry scars. Camps that once bustled with feasting now echo with sighs and quarrels. Time erodes not only walls, but hearts. Yet within this long stalemate, legends are forged. Achilles, the brightest flame among the Greeks, shines most fiercely during these early years. He storms villages, takes captives, and brings spoils back to camp. His wrath is quick, his spear unmatched. He becomes both hero and terror, a figure whose name spreads like wildfire. It is during one such raid that he takes Briseis, a woman who will one day become the pivot of his fury. And so on the other side, Hector defends. Day after day, he stands before Troy's gates, keeping the Greek tide at bay. To the Trojans, he is hope itself, a tower of strength, a figure whose very presence steadies trembling hearts. He is not flawless. He fears, he doubts, he longs for peace, but his courage outweighs his dread. Priam's sons fight beside him, each with his own fate awaiting. Yet it is Hector's name that will echo longest. The gods, of course, cannot resist meddling. To them, this war is a stage its mortals pawns upon a board of vanity and grudge. Hera, spurned at the judgment of Paris, stirs ceaselessly against Troy. Athena equally slighted schemes and guides Greek hands. Aphrodite, in turn, shields Paris, wrapping him in unseen arms whenever he falters. Apollo, ever sympathetic to the Trojans, bends his bow to their aid. Zeus himself, though striving for balance, leans as the winds of fate compel him. Pause with me here, gentle dreamer, and consider the Greeks did not see war as a clash of men alone, but as a theater of divine will. Every arrow loosed was thought to fly truer or falter depending on which god inclined their favor that moment. Imagine the comfort and the terror of such belief. To succeed was not wholly your doing. To fail was not wholly your fault. Yet you were never free, always caught in the quarrels of immortals. During these long years, strange episodes pepper the tale. Odysseus captures Dolon, a Trojan spy, with wolfskin upon his back, whose fate is sealed before dawn. Diomedes and Odysseus steal into the night to slay King Rhesus and steal his famed horses, said to drink from springs of ambrosia. The Greeks quarrel among themselves, boast and bicker, as men do when wars drag on, longer than anyone imagined. And all the while the prophecy of Achilles hums beneath it all. He will be both savior and curse the greatest strength and the deepest sorrow of the Greeks. Already his glory is unmatched. Yet already his pride is sharp, his sense of honor fragile as glass. The seeds of his wrath are there, waiting only for the right insult to crack them open. On the walls of Troy, Helen stands gazing out over the plain. The poets linger here, their voices softening. She is the cause, and yet not the cause, a woman both adored and despised, admired and cursed. The elders of Troy murmur that she is beautiful beyond words, that no man could resist her. And yet, as she watches the armies clash below, one wonders whether she too longs to turn back time, to unmake her choice, to escape the web the gods have spun around her. So the years flow like a river that seems endless, and we, dear listener, flow with them. Already the tide of destiny draws nearer to its greatest swell. The Greeks are weary, the Trojans defiant, the gods restless. Something must give, something must shatter, and soon it will. But for this night, let us rest with the thought that wars are not all fury and climax. Sometimes they are long stretches of waiting, of attrition, of years spent beneath the same stars, wondering when the end will come. Close your eyes a little as the waves murmur against the Trojan shore. Picture the camp spread out like constellations of fire warriors dozing on their shields, horses stamping in the night. And above them, all the gods watch unseen, smiling or frowning, as though deciding how long this stalemate should endure. The war is young still, though men already grow old within it. The long war lingers, dear listener, like a heavy mist that never quite lifts. 9 years of waiting, of sudden skirmishes, of raids upon quiet villages, and weary feasts in dusty camps. The Greeks remain on Trojan shores, their tents weathered by sun and salt. The Trojans keep to their walls, proud and unbroken. And though battles flare, neither side has yet won the day. It is in this restless stalemate that pride and anger, sharper than any spear, begin to gnaw at the hearts of men. Among the Greeks, no warrior shines more brightly than Achilles. Swift-footed, golden-haired, the son of a sea goddess, he is unmatched in strength and speed. His name is already sung in campfire songs, already whispered with awe. Yet greatness, as the Greeks well knew, is a double-edged gift. The higher the flame, the greater the shadow it casts. The spark that sets the blaze is a quarrel between kings. Agamemnon, commander of the Greek host, carries himself with the weight of authority, but also with the arrogance of one accustomed to having his will obeyed. He has taken a maiden Chryseis as a prize of war. But her father, a priest of Apollo, comes humbly to ransom her, back offering gifts and pleading for her release. Agamemnon, swollen with pride, mocks him and sends him away. Apollo hears the insult to his servant and responds with a plague. Arrows of disease fall upon the Greek camp, striking men and beasts alike. Fires burn constantly to consume the dead, the air thick with the smell of smoke and sorrow. The Greeks, desperate, turn to their leaders for counsel, and the prophet Calchas speaks the truth. Only the return of Chryseis to her father will lift the gods' anger. Agamemnon rages at the humiliation, but relents, sending her back. Yet to soothe his wounded pride, he vows to take another prize in her place, as though a woman were a mere token to balance accounts. And in his wrath, he seizes Briseis, the maiden dear to Achilles. Here, gentle dreamer, the air shifts. For Achilles, already proud, cannot bear the insult. To be dishonored before the host, to have his prize taken by the very man who should honor him, this is too much. His voice rises in fury, his words like thunder rolling over the camp. He nearly draws his blade against Agamemnon, but the goddess Athena, unseen by all but him, stays his hand, whispering restraint into his ear. Instead, Achilles withdraws. He declares he will fight no more, not until the Greeks learn how empty they are without him. And so he retreats to his tent, his mother Thetis listening as he pours out his grief upon the shore. She rises from the sea, shimmering with foam, and hears his plea. Achilles begs her to go to Zeus himself, to tilt the scales of war in favor of the Trojans, so that the Greeks might suffer and know how much they depend upon him. Thetis agrees, and soon the tide of battle will turn, not by spears alone, but by the wounded pride of one man. Pause here, dear listener, and notice the irony. The Greeks came to Troy to reclaim Helen, a woman taken from her husband. And now their mightiest warrior sulks in his tent because another woman has been taken from him. Desire, jealousy, pride. These are the true engines of this war, disguised beneath talk of honor and destiny. Meanwhile, upon the battlefield, others take the stage. Diomedes, fierce and relentless, rages through the Trojan ranks, so unstoppable that the poets call it his Aristeia, his day of glory. With Athena's aid, he even wounds Aphrodite herself, striking the goddess of love upon her wrist, forcing her to retreat to Olympus in tears. Imagine that dear dreamer, a mortal's spear, pricking the flesh of an immortal, and the heavens shuddering with the shock. Later, Diomedes even confronts Ares, the god of war, and with Athena's help wounds him too. Such are the heights and absurdities of epic, where men clash not only with men, but with gods themselves. Menelaus and Paris also meet in single combat. The wronged husband faces the seducer's spear against spear, while armies pause to watch. Menelaus is the stronger, dragging Paris by the helmet, nearly killing him. But Aphrodite intervenes, whisking Paris away in a cloud of mist, hiding him in Helen's chambers. There she scolds Helen, urging her to join him. And Helen, weary, conflicted, speaks words sharp as daggers. She mocks Paris for his cowardice, yet follows him nonetheless. Such is the entanglement of love and disdain, the knot that no sword can cut. The gods play their games, the mortals bleed, and still Achilles remains apart. Without him, the Greeks struggle, though they hold the line with effort and pain. The war grows stranger, more exhausting, like a dream that will not end. Let us pause with the image of Achilles sitting by the sea, gazing into the horizon as the waves curl at his feet. His hands are restless, his heart is a storm contained. Around him, the camp sags warriors fall, and Troy presses its advantage. The greatest warrior sulks in silence, his absence more powerful than his spear. And above the gods argue like petulant children, their quarrels shaping the fates of men below. Drift now, dear dreamer. With this thought, sometimes the most dangerous weapon in war is not the sword raised high, but the hand withdrawn, refusing to fight. The war grinds on the nights, lengthen, and the world waits for Achilles to rise again, but not yet. For now, the fires burn low on the beach, and weary men lie down in the dust, praying for dawn. The air over the plain of Troy grows thick with dust, dear listener, as the clash of men rises and falls like the tide. Yet the mightiest warrior of Greece, Achilles, sits apart in silence, his tent, a shadow at the edge of camp. The war has slipped into a strange imbalance. The Trojans press forward. With new courage, the Greeks falter, and all because one man has withdrawn his hand from the game. Achilles' absence is not only felt on the battlefield, it gnaws at the hearts of his companions too. Patroclus, his dearest friend, moves quietly in the camp, tending to the wounded, listening to the groans of men who curse their ill fortune. He loves Achilles fiercely, not merely as a comrade, but as the very balance of his soul. And when he sees the Greeks faltering, he feels anguish, where Achilles feels only wrath. Meanwhile, the quarrel between Agamemnon and Achilles festers like an unhealed wound. The Greek leaders gather their council heavy with tension. Nestor, old and wise, tries to smooth tempers, but pride holds fast. Agamemnon, still brooding over the insult, and Achilles, still blazing with wounded honor, refuse reconciliation. It is as though two great rocks have split apart, and the river of the war churns violently between them. The Trojans seize their chance. Led by Hector noble and steadfast, they pour from their gates. Their chariots rumble across the plain, their spears glint in the sun. The Greeks are driven back toward their ships, the place they least wish to fight. For if the ships burn, their hope of returning home burns with them. Here, the gods step once more onto the stage. Hera and Athena, still stung by Paris' judgment, burn with zeal for the Greeks. Aphrodite and Apollo shield the Trojans, each blow of a sword guided or deflected by unseen hands. Even Zeus tilts the balance, lending Troy his favor for a time, as Thetis once begged of him. Imagine the chaos of such a field. Dear dreamer, men battling men, yet feeling unseen, fingers tugging at every shield, every arrow, every heartbeat. The struggle grows so fierce that the Greeks, desperate, consider returning home in defeat. Their morale is as fragile as the sails that carried them. But Odysseus, ever persuasive, rallies them with words sharp as spears. He reminds them of the oath of their honor, of the shame of retreat. And so they stay, though hope flickers dimly. Agamemnon himself is wounded, struck by an arrow, and withdraws from battle. Diomedes too is injured, his fiery strength dimmed. Even Odysseus is gashed and forced back. Ajax, massive as a wall, holds the line for a time, his great shield sheltering many. Yet even he cannot stem the tide forever. Through it all, Achilles watches untouched. Some say he strums his lyre in his tent, singing songs of heroes long dead, his voice calm. while his companions bleed. There is bitterness in this image, the mightiest warrior at ease, while lesser men fall like leaves before the wind. His wrath has hardened into a kind of cruel stillness. The Greeks grow desperate enough to send an embassy. 3 men approach Achilles, Odysseus wise with words, Ajax strong and direct, and Phoenix the old tutor who once cradled Achilles as a child. They come bearing gifts from Agamemnon, rich as treasures, even the promise of Briseis returned untouched. Agamemnon admits his wrong, if not with humility, then at least with a show of recompense. Odysseus speaks first, weaving his plea with honeyed words, reminding Achilles of the glory that awaits him if he returns to the fight. Ajax speaks next, blunt and heavy, saying that honor lies not in sulking, but in saving comrades. Last, Phoenix speaks with tears, recalling Achilles' boyhood, begging him as a father begs a son. But Achilles is unmoved. He sits in the glow of firelight, his expression like stone, and declares he will not fight. Not for Agamemnon, not for riches, not even for the suffering Greeks. He has no desire to shed blood, only to enrich a king who has insulted him. Instead, he speaks of leaving altogether, of sailing home, of seeking peace in obscurity, rather than fleeting glory. Pause with me here, gentle dreamer. Can you feel the weight of this moment? Achilles, born for greatness, beloved by the poets, declares that he would rather live quietly than die gloriously. It is a whisper of defiance against the very fabric of Greek heroic culture. For what is a hero, if not one who chooses a short, shining life over a long-forgotten one? Yet Achilles dares to long for both peace and love, for something gentler than the clash of bronze. The embassy departs in sorrow. Their mission failed. The Greeks return to their tents, their hearts heavier than before. The Trojans, emboldened, prepare for greater assaults. And somewhere within Troy's high walls, Helen gazes out once more, watching the plain shimmer with fires, knowing that every flicker marks a man's life poised on the edge of fate. So let us rest for now, with the image of Achilles seated in silence, his lyre's notes drifting out into the night air. The Greeks groan and bleed beyond the campfires. The Trojans press closer, and still he waits. The wrath of Achilles has not yet reached its peak, but it smolders, ready to ignite when grief cuts deeper than pride. Sleep well, gentle dreamer, in this pause before the storm, for soon the tide will turn and the war will burn brighter than ever before. The night stretches long over the Trojan plain. Dear listener, the stars glimmering like pinpricks in a darkened tapestry. The Greeks sleep uneasily in their tents, while the Trojans gather strength behind their tall gates. The war has shifted, tilting now toward Troy, and the absence of Achilles grows more glaring with every clash of bronze. Without his spear, the Greeks falter. And in the mornings that follow, the battles grow fiercer, filled with duels that carry the weight of nations. Menelaus, the wronged husband, takes his chance to face Paris, the shepherd prince who stole Helen. It seems fitting, almost like a duel arranged by destiny itself, husband versus seducer, justice versus desire. Upon the plain, they meet spears, poised armies, watching in tense silence. Menelaus strikes true, dragging Paris by the helmet strap until his foe gasps and stumbles, nearly choked. Victory seems near, yet fate, ever sly, intervenes. Aphrodite, who once promised Paris the world's fairest woman, will not let her champion die so quickly. In a shimmer of mist, she whisks him away to Helen's chamber. There she urges Helen to comfort her lover, but Helen, weary and bitter, speaks words that cut. Would you not rather die bravely, she asks, than be carried off like a child? Yet even in her scorn, she cannot sever the tangled threads that bind her to Paris. The duel ends inconclusively, and with it, any hope that honor might resolve the war without further bloodshed. Both sides take up arms once more, the brief dream of peace shattered like pottery underfoot. Next, Diomedes rises to prominence, his fury burning as bright as his bronze armor. On this day, called his Aristia, his day of glory, he rampages across the battlefield, felling Trojan after Trojan. Yet his triumph is not his alone, for Athena, bright-eyed goddess of wisdom, stands at his side, guiding his hand. She lifts the mist from his eyes, granting him the terrifying gift of seeing gods as they move among men. And so Diomedes, unflinching, strikes not only mortals, but immortals. He wounds Aphrodite as she tries to shield Aeneas, slicing her wrist and sending her fleeing back to Olympus, weeping like a child. Imagine, gentle dreamer, the strange tenderness of such a scene, the goddess of love clutching her bleeding hand, comforted by her mother Dione, while Zeus himself chides her gently for meddling where spears fly. But Diomedes is not yet finished. Empowered by Athena, he hurls his spear at Ares, the god of war himself. The weapon strikes, and the war god roars so loudly that both armies quake. He too retreats to Olympus, complaining of wounds like a sulking child, while Zeus reminds him that he above all should expect pain in the game of war. This moment is strange and almost humorous, dear listener gods, behaving like mortals, mortals striking at gods. Yet to the Greeks, it revealed a deeper truth, that even the divine are not invulnerable, and that human courage can pierce even the heavens. Elsewhere, Hector proves himself, Troy's pillar. He confronts Ajax, the massive Greek champion, in single combat. Their duel is long and fierce bronze, clashing upon bronze dust rising around them. Yet neither gains the upper hand, and as dusk falls, they part with gifts, exchange the sword for a belt, respect for respect. It is a reminder that even amid slaughter, a code of honor lingers, fragile but enduring. The gods, restless as ever, meddle with each turn of battle. Hera seduces Zeus, wrapping him in her charms, so that while he lies drowsing, the Greeks gain ground. When he wakes enraged, he shifts the tide back toward Troy. Apollo breathes strength into Hector, who drives the Greeks to their very ship's fire, licking at the hulls. The clash sways like a pendulum, one side rising, the other falling, never still. Through it all, Achilles remains apart, watching, waiting. His wrath has cooled into something harder, colder. The Greeks beg for his return, but he shakes his head. His heart is locked. Only Patroclus sees the storm gathering within him, though he cannot yet know how soon it will break. Pause here, dear dreamer. Reflect on how strange this war has become. Men fight not only each other, but also the whims of gods, their fates tossed like dice upon a table they cannot see. A duel might end in honor, or it might dissolve in mist. A spear might strike true, or it might be bent aside by unseen fingers. And always the walls of Troy loom in the distance, watching unbroken their towers, standing like silent witnesses to human folly. As night falls once more, fires gleam on both sides of the plain. The Trojans exult in their strength, the Greeks tend to their wounds. The war has not yet reached its peak, but the tension coils tighter with each passing day. Soon, one choice will shatter the balance entirely. But not tonight. Tonight, we rest in the pause between battles, listening to the crackle of campfires and the whispers of men who dream of home. The embers glow low in the Greek camp. Dear listener, the men huddled in silence after another day of blood and dust. Their ships groan upon the shore, their oars pulled up as if in surrender, and their hearts sag heavy. For though Diomedes has burned brightly, though Ajax has stood like a wall, still the Trojans press them hard. Without Achilles, the tide always seems to slip away. The Greeks know it, the Trojans know it, and Achilles himself knows it, though he will not bend. At last, the leaders gather by torchlight, Their voices hushed, their faces grave. Something must be done. If Achilles cannot be commanded, perhaps he can be persuaded. So Agamemnon, who once insulted him so deeply, swallows a measure of his pride. He sends an embassy 3 men, chosen not only for their stature, but for their voices, each carrying a different kind of appeal. Odysseus, silver-tongued and clever to reason with him. Ajax, mighty and plain-spoken, to speak with the blunt force of truth. And Phoenix, old tutor and foster father to Achilles, to soften him with memories of boyhood and love. Now imagine their steps through the quiet camp, the hush of night around them, the stars watching as though they too wish to hear what will be said. They come to Achilles' tent, where lamplight flickers through the hide walls and the sound of a lyre drifts softly out. Achilles, for all his fury, is not without gentleness. He plays now, singing songs of heroes long dead, his fingers weaving notes that carry both sorrow and longing. When his guests are announced, he greets them with courtesy. For hospitality, Xenia must be honored even in wrath. Odysseus speaks first, his words flowing like honey poured from a jar. He recounts the Greeks suffering the fire that licks their ships, the wounds of their leaders. He speaks of Agamemnon's regret, of the rich gifts offered in recompense, tripods, cauldrons, gold horses, women, even the promise that when Troy falls, Achilles may take 20 of its fairest maidens, and Briseis, too restored, untouched. He paints glory before him like a bright horizon. If Achilles returns, victory is certain, and his name will echo forever. Achilles listens, but his eyes do not soften. No gifts, he says, can heal a wounded heart. Agamemnon dishonored me before all, and nothing can erase that. Do they think I fight for treasure? For women? My soul does not hunger for such things. I hunger only for honor, and that he took from me. His voice is low, but it burns like coals hidden beneath ash. Then Ajax rises, towering, his speech as blunt as his blade. Achilles, you are a hard man, he says. The Greeks suffer, and you sit idle. Men will curse your name if you let them die when you could save them. Think not of Agamemnon. Think of your comrades who bleed for you, who need you. Will you abandon them all for one man's insult? Achilles does not answer at once. His hands tighten upon the lyre, the strings humming faintly. He looks toward the dark sea, beyond the camp, as though seeking answers in its endless sway. At last, Phoenix speaks, his voice, cracked with age, carrying the weight of memory. He recalls the days of Achilles' childhood, when he cradled him, taught him to speak, guided his hands in war and wisdom. He weeps not from rhetoric, but from love. My son, he says, do not harden your heart. I have no sons of my own. You are my son. If you turn from the Greeks, you turn from me too. Stay fight, let your glory shine. The tent falls quiet. The lamplight flickers. Even Patroclus, sitting nearby, watches with pleading eyes. And yet Achilles shakes his head. Phoenix, dear to me as you are, I cannot. Not for Agamemnon. Not for these gifts. My fate has been laid before me. If I remain, I will die young, but win everlasting glory. If I return home, I will live long, but be forgotten. And I tell you now, I choose life. Let the Greeks fight their war. Let them taste their folly without me. Tomorrow, I will sail for home. The words strike like thunder. The embassy has failed. They depart heavy-hearted, returning to their camp, with sorrow etched upon their brows. Behind them, Achilles sits once more by his lyre, his song resuming softer now, as though even he feels the weight of what he has refused. Pause here, gentle dreamer, and consider what it means to turn from destiny. Achilles, destined for glory, dares to dream of peace, of returning to Phthia, of growing old among his people. It is almost tender, almost human. Yet myths are not kind to such longings. The loom of fate is already threaded. and the shuttle will not pause simply because one man wishes it. The night deepens, the fires dim, and the war waits. The Greeks despair, the Trojans rejoice, and Achilles remains apart, his wrath unbroken, his pride unbent. And somewhere in the shadows, destiny smiles, knowing that soon another grief will drive him back to the battlefield, fiercer than before. But for tonight, let us rest in this fragile pause, where hope flickers like a dying torch, and Achilles' song drifts out across the silent sea. The dawn spills pale light across the beach, dear listener, gilding the tips of spears and the ragged edges of tents. The Greeks rise, weary, their spirits heavy, for the embassy to Achilles has failed. He will not fight. His tent is silent, save for the faint strains of his lyre, and his ships lie idle at the edge of the sea. The Trojans, by contrast, emerge from their gates with renewed vigor, led by Hector, their city's shield. Their chariots roll like thunder, their battle cries echo across the plain. The Greeks brace themselves, but their hearts are troubled. Without Achilles, they are like a body without a heartbeat, staggering yet unable to fall completely. The battle surges. Dust swirls thick as fog, arrows hiss through the air, and bronze crashes upon bronze. Men fall, their cries swallowed by the roar of war. Patroclus watches. He moves among the wounded, steadying hands, binding gashes, carrying water to parched lips. His heart aches at the sight of so many comrades faltering. He sees Nestor, the aged king, wounded and weary, leaning upon his staff, speaking words that burn like embers. Go to Achilles. Persuade him if you can, and if he will not fight, then at least borrow his armor. Let the Trojans believe he has returned, and they will falter. Patroclus carries this plea to his dearest friend. He enters the tent, where Achilles sits calm, yet bitter, his face lit by the glow of the sea beyond. If you will not fight, Patroclus says gently, then let me wear your armor. Let me take the Myrmidons into battle. The Trojans will think you have returned, and the Greeks will breathe again. Achilles gazes at him, long torn between pride and affection. You may go, he says at last, but remember this: drive them back from the ships, save our men, and then return. Do not press further. Do not seek glory for yourself, Patroclus. Glory is mine, and fate waits for me. Do not trespass into what destiny reserves for me. Patroclus bows his head, but in his heart the words stir differently. To wear Achilles' armor is to become for a time the very light of Greece. How could he resist carrying that light further, shining brighter, even if only for a moment? And so the armor is donned, bronze, gleaming helmet, plumed shield, broad and bright. To the Greeks, the sight is like dawn itself. Achilles has returned, they cry, their hearts leaping, their courage renewed. The Myrmidons, Achilles' fierce warriors, follow with shouts that echo like surf against cliffs. Together they surge into battle, and the Trojans reel. Hector himself feels the tremor of fear. For who can stand against Achilles? He orders a retreat, his warriors stumbling back toward the gates, their momentum broken. Patroclus drives them hard, scattering them like chaff before the wind. His spear strikes true, his heart pounding with a fierce joy he has never known. He cuts down Sarpedon, beloved son of Zeus, staining the ground with divine blood. Even Zeus pauses, his heart heavy, torn between love for his son and the unyielding law of fate. At last, he allows Sarpedon to fall, sending sleep and death to bear him away, while Patroclus surges on. But here, gentle dreamer, the tale darkens. For Patroclus forgets Achilles' warning. He drives the Trojans not only from the ships, but all the way to the gates of Troy itself. He feels invincible in that borrowed armor, as though Achilles' very soul flows within him. Yet armor cannot change fate. Apollo, unseen, strikes him from behind, stunning him, loosening his grip. His spear clatters to the earth, his vision blurs. Then Hector comes. Noble, steadfast Hector, defender of Troy, sees Patroclus stumbling and mistakes him for Achilles himself. With a cry, he drives his spear deep, and Patroclus falls. As his lifeblood seeps into the dust, he whispers, "Prophecy, Hector, you have slain me, but your doom is near. For Achilles will return, and you will not escape him." The battlefield shudders with the weight of this death. The Greeks fight desperately to recover Patroclus's body, while the Trojans strive to strip the armor as a trophy. Around his fallen form, bronze clashes like thundermen, shrieking gods watching with bated breath. And in the distance, news of the loss begins to stir within Achilles' tent. Pause with me here, dear listener, and feel the heaviness of this moment. For Patroclus was more than a friend to Achilles. He was his heart outside his body, his gentler self, the tether that kept his fury bound. And now, that tether has snapped. Achilles' wrath, once smoldering, will soon blaze beyond all restraint. The war, already cruel, is about to become something even the gods will tremble to behold. For now, though, let us linger with Patroclus, lying still upon the earth, his borrowed armor, stolen his spirit, whispering into the night. He sought only to help, to protect, to shine for a moment in his friend's place. And in that shining, he has kindled a fire that will consume heroes and topple walls. Rest, gentle dreamer. With this thought, sometimes love leads us to brave beyond our limits. And in that bravery, fate finds its sharpest opening. The Greek camp lies shrouded in grief. Dear listener, its fires dimmed as word spreads of Patroclus's fall. The Myrmidons return without him, their shields battered, their faces ashen, carrying only sorrow. And in the tent by the shore, Achilles hears the news. The cry that bursts from him is not the cry of a warrior, but of a soul torn in two. He throws himself upon the ground, clutching dust in his hands, pouring it over his head, as though to bury himself alive with his friend. Thetis, his mother, rises from the sea at his weeping. She cradles him, the salt of her waves mingling with the salt of his tears. "My son," she whispers, "what grief has seized you?" Achilles answers not in words alone, but in the raw anguish of one who has lost the part of himself he valued most. Patroclus was his companion, his mirror, the gentleness to his fury. Now he is gone, and with him the last reason Achilles had to restrain his rage. Mother Achilles says, "At last I will return to battle. I will kill Hector with my own hands. Yet I know that in doing so, I seal my own fate. You told me long ago, a short life with glory, or a long life in obscurity. I choose the short one now, for what is life without Patroclus?" Thetis grieves to hear this, for no mother wishes to see her son embrace death. Yet she knows the truth cannot be changed. She promises to bring him new armor, forged by the hands of Hephaestus himself, so that he may stride once more into the fray. And so she departs, sinking back into the depths of the sea. Meanwhile, the Greeks fight desperately to retrieve Patroclus's body. The Trojans swarm around it, eager to claim the corpse as trophy, to strip it of Achilles' armor. Hector himself, triumphant, dons that armor, believing he has claimed a piece of invincibility. But in truth, dear dreamer, he has only clothed himself in doom, for the armor belongs to Achilles, and fate does not smile on those who wear another man's destiny. The struggle for Patroclus's body is fierce. Ajax, towering like a fortress, plants himself above the fallen friend, his shield wide enough to shelter many. Menelaus too stands firm, his grief sharpened into valor. Blow after blow they fight off the Trojans, while the battle rages like a storm around them. At last, with great effort, they carry Patroclus back to camp, his lifeless form draped in sorrow, his comrades weeping as they follow. That night, Thetis returns with the armor of Hephaestus, Imagine it, gentle dreamer, bronze, shining brighter than the sun, a shield vast and round, etched with the very patterns of the cosmos cities, at peace, and at war fields, plowed and harvested stars wheeling above the whole of human life captured in divine metal. The poets linger long on this shield, for in it they saw not only the craft of a god, but the truth that war is but one scene in the great play of existence. Achilles gazes upon the armor, and in its gleam his wrath sharpens to a blade. He calls his men together, his voice trembling with both fury and grief. Tomorrow, he declares, I return to the fight. Hector will pay. None will hold me back. The next day dawns with both dread and anticipation. Achilles strides onto the plain, his new armor blazing, his very presence striking fear into Trojan hearts. He does not wait for parley or duel. He charges like fire breaking through dry forest. The Trojans scatter before him, but Hector stands his ground, bound by honor and by fate. Before they meet, however, Achilles pauses to honor Patroclus. He drives the Trojans back from the ships securing the camp, but he will not eat, nor will he rest until he has avenged his friend. His grief is both his shield and his spear. The war is no longer for Helen, nor for Agamemnon, nor for any king's pride. It is for Patroclus, and for the wound that grief has carved into Achilles' heart. Pause here, gentle dreamer, and let us linger on this transformation. Achilles, who once turned away from war out of insulted pride, now throws himself back into it out of love and sorrow. This is the essence of tragedy, that the very thing we hold most dear can also be the spark that drives us to ruin. The camp is quiet that night, save for the sobbing of men and the whisper of waves. Patroclus lies upon his beer candles, flickering around him. Achilles kneels beside him, speaking softly to the still face, promising vengeance, promising that Hector will not live to see another sunset. So let us rest in this moment, with Achilles poised upon the edge of wrath, his grief burning like a torch in the dark. Tomorrow, the duel will come, and with it, the turning of fate's wheel. But for now, dear listener, close your eyes and breathe with the sound of the sea, and know that even in myths, love and loss are the truest songs sung beneath the stars. The sun rises golden over the plain, dear listener, its light falling upon the new forged armor that gleams upon Achilles' body. He stands tall, radiant as a god, his grief sharpened into a terrible resolve. Around him, the Greeks stir with renewed courage. The man they had begged for, the warrior they had despaired without, has returned at last. And yet they know, though they cannot speak it aloud, that his return is not victory, but the prelude to something darker. For Achilles himself has said it by avenging Patroclus. He walks directly into his own fate. The battle resumes with a ferocity greater than any before. Achilles strides onto the field, and the Trojans tremble. No spear can touch him, no shield can bar his path. He cuts through men as a sickle through dry wheat, his wrath unrelenting. He seeks only Hector, but in his fury, all who stand before him fall. Rivers run red, and the Scamander itself, once a tranquil stream, winding through Troy's plain, rises in anger at the slaughter. Imagine it, gentle dreamer, a river god stirred to wrath, its waters swelling, roaring, sweeping over Achilles in waves of mud and foam. Even nature recoils from the excess of his vengeance, yet Achilles does not falter. He battles even the river itself, his spear flashing, his heart unyielding. Only the gods restrain the torrent, for his wrath threatens to drown the very plain. It is a strange, almost surreal moment, a man contending not only with warriors, but with the elements, as though his rage has grown too large for the mortal world to contain. And still, he hunts Hector. The Trojan prince, noble and steadfast, girds himself for the inevitable. He knows what awaits him, for Patroclus's dying words echo in his ears. Yet duty binds him to his father, Priam aged and weary, to his mother Hecuba, whose eyes weep ceaselessly, to Andromache, his beloved wife, and their infant son, Astyanax. The scene lingers in the poets telling Hector standing upon the walls, Andromache clinging to him, begging him not to face Achilles. She fears widowhood, fears her child growing fatherless, fears the ruin of Troy. But Hector cannot hide. Honor demands that he face what comes. With a final kiss for his wife and child, he steps onto the plain, armored not only in bronze, but in love and in sorrow. The gates close behind him. Alone, he awaits the man whose fury is like wildfire. The duel is one of the most famous ever sung. Hector stands tall, yet when Achilles approaches his armor, blazing his eyes fierce, Hector feels fear clutch his heart. He turns and runs. 3 times they circle the walls of Troy, faster than the wind, the Trojans watching breathlessly from the ramparts, the Greeks shouting from afar. It is a haunting image, dear listener, not a clash of equals at first, but a chase the hunter relentless, the prey desperate. At last, Athena intervenes, taking the form of Hector's brother, Deiphobus. She deceives Hector into stopping promising aid. Encouraged, Hector turns to face Achilles. He casts his spear at strikes, but glances harmlessly from Achilles' shield. He calls for his brother to bring another, but no one answers. He realizes then, too late, that he has been tricked. The gods themselves have abandoned him. Achilles closes in, spear poised. With deadly precision, he strikes Hector through the throat. The Trojan prince falls, life spilling into the dust, the cries of Troy rising from the walls like a lamentation. His final words plead for mercy. Do not let the dogs devour me. Return my body to my family. But Achilles, his heart still chained by rage, refuses. No mercy, he declares, not for you who slew Patroclus. Even if Priam offered ransom beyond measure, I would not yield. He lashes Hector's body to his chariot, dragging it across the plain, dust swirling, hair streaming, flesh torn. The Trojans cry out from the walls, Hecuba tearing her veil, Andromache collapsing at the sight. Priam watches, aged hands clutching at nothing, his grief too great for words. Pause here, gentle dreamer. Feel the weight of this cruelty. Achilles, greatest of warriors, shines brightest now, but his light is harsh, burning all it touches. Even his comrades grow uneasy at his excess, for honor demands respect for the dead, yet he defies it. His wrath has consumed him, and though he has avenged Patroclus, he has also lost himself. Night falls, and the body of Hector lies dishonored, dragged again and again around the walls. Yet something stirs amidst the grief, the courage of an old king who will dare to step into the enemy's camp and beg for his son. That scene, soft and terrible, waits just ahead. But for now, let us leave the battlefield in silence. The Trojans mourn, the Greeks watch, and Achilles, though triumphant, is a man already walking with death beside him. Rest with this thought, dear listener, that vengeance, though it satisfies for a moment, often leaves behind a deeper emptiness, a hollow echo in the heart. The tale moves onward, but tonight, the plain of Troy is covered in dust, blood, and sorrow, and the stars above look coldly on. The Greek camp lies restless in the dark, dear listener. Fires burn low. Men whisper of the day's horrors, and in the heart of the camp, Achilles still rages. Hector's body, tied to his chariot, has been dragged around the walls of Troy, dust mingling with blood, a sight too cruel even for hardened warriors. Yet grief is a strange tide. It can ebb even in the fiercest heart. When night settles, Achilles finally pauses. He sits alone, staring at the still form of Patroclus, whispering promises into the silence. And then a figure slips into the camp. An old man, fragile yet unbroken, guided not by guards, but by courage itself. It is Priam, king of Troy, father of Hector. He comes in secret, aided by Hermes, who guides him through the dark. Imagine him, gentle dreamer, bent with age hands, trembling, yet stepping into the tent of the man who killed his son. He kneels before Achilles, clasps his knees, and kisses the hand still stained with Hector's blood. "Remember your own father," Priam says, his voice breaking. "Think of Peleus, far away longing for his son. I have lost many sons, but none like Hector. He was the pillar of my house. I have come to ransom him. Have pity. Give me back my child." Achilles, struck to the heart, feels his fury falter. He sees not only Priam's grief, but also his own future, the father he will never see again, the life he will never live. Tears rise first in Priam's eyes, then in Achilles'. And so, the tent once filled with wrath becomes filled with weeping. The young man and the old king sit together, mourning not only Hector, but the weight of mortality itself. For even the greatest must bow before grief. At last, Achilles relents. He orders Hector's body cleansed, anointed with oils wrapped in linen. Tenderness returns where cruelty once reigned. "Take him," Achilles says softly. "Bury him with honor. And grieve as fathers must grieve." Priam bows, his heart torn open, but with this gift, some measure of peace returns. Pause here, dear listener. Let the image linger, two enemies united for a moment in sorrow, the fury of war hushed if only briefly by the common bond of love and loss. It is one of the most human scenes in all the myth, one that ancient poets return to again and again. Even Homer, in his Iliad, chose to end not with the fall of Troy, but with Hector's funeral, for in that act of compassion, something eternal was revealed. But the wheel of fate does not stop turning. The war continues, and Achilles, though softened, for a knight still walks the path laid out for him. Soon, new enemies arrive. From distant lands come reinforcements, the Amazon queen Penthesilea, fierce and radiant, her spear flashing like lightning, and Memnon, king of Ethiopia, his armor gleaming like midnight beloved sun of the dawn goddess Eos. They fight with valor, and Achilles meets them both. He slays them in battle, and though his glory grows, so too does the shadow of his doom. Penthesilea's death is told with a pang of tragedy, for as she falls, Achilles sees her beauty and feels a sudden stab of pity, perhaps even of love. For a heartbeat, he realizes what might have been a connection, a life beyond war, but the moment vanishes as quickly as it comes, leaving only silence and regret. And so, Achilles fights on his wrath, cooling into inevitability. He knows his end approaches. It comes not by spear in open combat, but by an arrow loosed by Paris, guided by Apollo's unseen hand. The shaft strikes the one place left vulnerable, the heel by which Thetis once held him when she dipped him in the river. The greatest warrior of Greece, nearly invincible, falls by a wound so small. His lifeblood seeps into the soil of Troy, and the plain that has seen so much slaughter claims its brightest flame. The Greeks weep. Ajax and Odysseus recover his body, fighting bitterly to keep it from the Trojans. His funeral is vast, his pyre blazing high, and his ashes mingled with those of Patroclus, as he once promised. The Myrmidons shear their hair, and even the sea nymphs rise to mourn. Pause once more, gentle dreamer. The death of Achilles is more than the fall of a warrior. It is the reminder that even the greatest are bound by fate. Glory is fleeting, and the river of time carries all away. Yet his name endures, sung for millennia, carried on the lips of poets and storytellers into this very night. The war, however, does not end with him. The Greeks must press on, without their brightest star, and new sorrows await them. The madness of Ajax, the cunning of Odysseus, and the hollow gift of the wooden horse. But for tonight, let us rest with the image of Achilles and Patroclus. Their ashes mingled their bond, unbroken, even in death, as the stars burn coldly above the smoking plain. The death of Achilles leaves the Greek camp hollow, dear listener, like a hearth whose flame has been suddenly quenched. The Myrmidons, once fierce, now mourn their songs, replaced by silence. His armor, forged by Hephaestus himself, lies bloodied and empty. The war still rages, but without its brightest warrior, the Greeks falter again. And yet in grief, men do not simply lay down their arms, they quarrel. They scheme, they reach for what remains of glory. Achilles' arms must be awarded to a new champion. Ajax, the great bulwark of the Greeks, believes they should be his by right. No warrior has stood firmer in battle, none has borne more weight upon his shoulders. Odysseus, sly and silver-tongued, argues that cunning has carried the war as much as strength, that his wits have won where brute force could not. The contest is judged not by the swing of a sword, but by the sway of words. And in that arena, Odysseus prevails. The armor of Achilles is given to him. Ajax, humiliated, feels his honor torn from him like flesh. Rage clouds his mind. Some say Athena herself darkens his sight, driving him into madness. He slaughters cattle in the night, believing them to be Greek leaders, and when dawn reveals the truth, shame overwhelms him. Unable to bear the weight of dishonor, he falls upon his own sword. Thus, the second pillar of Greek strength collapses, leaving the camp lonelier still. Yet the Greeks cling to hope, for oracles speak of conditions that must be met before Troy can fall. They must bring Neoptolemus, the young son of Achilles, into the war. They must also recover the bow of Heracles, long kept by the outcast Philoctetes on the Isle of Lemnos, where he was abandoned because of a festering wound. Odysseus and others undertake these quests, weaving new threads into the tapestry of fate. Neoptolemus arrives fierce, though still green, his bloodline a living echo of his father's might. Philoctetes, bitter, but persuaded, returns with the bow, whose arrows will one day strike down Paris himself. Still, the walls of Troy stand unbroken. The Greeks, weary after 10 long years, turn increasingly to cunning. Odysseus, whose mind is always turning, conceives the trick that will end the stalemate, a great wooden horse, vast as a tower hollow within. Let it be an offering, he says, a gift to the gods left upon the shore as we sail away. The Trojans, in their pride, will drag it into their city. And when night falls, those hidden within will emerge and open the gates. And so, the horse has built its timbers, creaking its shape awe-inspiring. It is both art and deception, a marvel that conceals doom. The Greeks feign retreat, burning their tents, sailing out of sight to wait beyond the horizon. All that remains is the horse looming silent upon the sand. The Trojans pour from their gates, marveling. Some cry that it is a trap. Cassandra, ever cursed to speak truth and never be believed, warns them of the danger. The priest Laocoon, stern and wary, hurls his spear against the horse's flank. The hollow space within resounds with a ringing thud, yet fate is not so easily undone. In that moment, serpents rise from the sea, monstrous and coiling, and crush Laocoon and his sons in their jaws. The Trojans, horrified, see it not as warning, but as omen. Laocoon has been punished for his impiety. Clearly, they think the horse is sacred, meant for them to honor. Pause here, gentle dreamer, and consider the irony. The very sign that should have saved them becomes the reason they fall. So often in these tales, fate disguises salvation as disaster, and disaster as salvation until men cannot tell one from the other. And so, with shouts of triumph, the Trojans drag the horse into their city. They break their gates. To widen the path, they crown the horse with garlands. They dance and feast, believing the war is finally over. For the first time in a decade, Joy swells in Troy. Fires blaze not with sorrow, but with celebration, and music fills the streets. But the horse stands silent, vast and patient. Inside, Greek warriors crouch in stillness. Odysseus, Diomedes, Menelaus, and others, their breaths shallow, their hands clenched on swords. Outside, the Trojans drink and sing their laughter, echoing through streets that will soon run with blood. Pause with me once more, dear listener, and let this moment settle. It is the last calm before the storm, the final heartbeat before ruin. The city shines with torchlight, its people drunk with hope. Yet destiny waits inside a hollow belly of wood, and before the dawn, Troy will never be the same again. Rest with that thought, as though you too stood upon those high walls, gazing at the strange wooden shape below, wondering whether it is truly gift or curse. The stars wheel above, indifferent, and the night deepens toward its terrible climax. The night deepens over Troy. Dear listener, warm breezes carrying the smell of roasting meat, of wine spilled on marble, of flowers trampled in dance. For the first time in 10 years, the Trojans feel joy unchained. They believe the war has ended, that the Greeks are gone, their ships vanished beyond the horizon. In the squares and courtyards, torches flare, lyres sing, and children laugh. The great wooden horse stands at the center of the city, crowned with garlands, its towering head silhouetted against the stars. None suspect the secret it holds. But within its hollow belly, Greek warriors crouch in silence. Odysseus waits, his sharp mind ticking away the hours. Diomedes grips his spear. Menelaus breathes heavily, his thoughts on Helen, who sits not far away, her beauty undimmed, though her heart is weary. Each man holds his breath, waiting for the signal that will come only when the city lies deepest in slumber. At last, the feasting wanes. Torches gutter, laughter fades, and one by one, the Trojans sink into drunken sleep. The streets grow quiet, save for the chirp of night insects and the soft lap of waves against the harbor. From within, the horse, a rope lowers soundless, and the Greeks descend like shadows. They fan out silent as death blades drawn. At the same time, a beacon flares upon the shore, a signal to the fleet which had not sailed home after all, but waited just out of sight. Their ships return oars, churning black waters, bringing the full host back to the city. The gates are opened. The tide of Greeks pours in. Then, dear listener, the night erupts. Fire leaps to the sky as torches are hurled onto rooftops. Doors are battered down. Shrieks pierce the silence, and the streets run with terror. The joy of hours before turns to ruin in an instant. The Greeks rage through the city, sparing none. Priam, old and helpless, clings to the altar of Zeus within his palace, but Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, cuts him down where he kneels. Andromache sees her child, Astyanax, torn from her arms and hurled from the walls, so that no heir of Hector may rise again. Cassandra, wailing, is dragged from the temple of Athena, her prayers unheard. Helen, the woman at the heart of it all, watches as her city burns. Some say she cowers, fearing Menelaus's wrath. Others say she walks serenely untouched by the chaos, her beauty shielding her even now. When Menelaus finds her sword drawn, he is ready to strike. But his rage falters. Her face undoes him once more, as it undid Paris long ago. She returns with him to Sparta, though whether in triumph or in chains, none can truly say. The city itself collapses into smoke and ruin. Towers crumble, temples blaze, the cries of the dying rise to heaven. Aeneas, noble son of Troy, carries his father Anchises upon his shoulders and leads his son Ascanius through the flames, guided by fate toward distant lands. From him, the poets say, will one day spring the lineage of Rome. Thus, even in Troy's ruin, new destiny takes root. The Greeks, though, Victors are cursed by their own cruelty. Many will not return home at once or at all. Agamemnon will meet death at the hands of his wife. Menelaus will wander long before reclaiming his throne. Odysseus will wander longer still, 10 more years across the seas. Victory tastes of ash, and the gods do not forget the excesses of that night. Pause here, gentle dreamer. Close your eyes, and picture the city that once gleamed like a jewel, now black and silent, the smoke curling into the dawn. Think of the old king, kneeling the brave prince fallen, the women led away in chains. Think too of Cassandra, her cries lost in the flames her truth never believed. This is how Troy ends, not with honor, not with glory, but with fire sorrow and the weeping of mothers. And yet, within the ruin lies the echo of stories that will be told for centuries. Pain gives birth to legend lost to memory, and the ashes of Troy feed the roots of countless poems, plays, and dreams. Even now, you listen in the quiet of your night, your own eyes heavy, and the voices of those ancient poets hum once more. So let us rest here upon the smoking plain. The war is ended, the city fallen, the heroes scattered. What remains is grief and remembrance, and the slow passing of time that heals even wounds such as these. Sleep now, dear listener, knowing the tale has reached its darkest hour. Tomorrow, other myths will rise. Other stories will be told. But tonight, Troy lies silent beneath the stars. And in that silence, perhaps you too may find rest. Sweet dreams.